Hello, and welcome to another installment of the DM Journal. I'm Jack from JOC Tabletop, and this last few weeks per se have been slow. Very, very slow. I've not done a lot, not had a lot to do either, what with schoolwork taking up a large portion of my time, and just not really having all that much to sink my teeth into recently. Games have been going as normal, and, well, I feel like I need some more stuff to fill my time, really. Next week, school's out, so I'm going to spend all week writing and finishing off the first chapter and starting the second chapter of the Thieves of Rosebrook adventure that we should be releasing sort of early to mid next year. So that's pretty exciting. I've also, as of a couple of weeks ago, I think, I'm not sure if I talked about it last week or not, I don't remember, the Archive of Esoteric Secrets, all 160 spells are completed, 80 of which you can find for free on the DM's Guild. If you go to our blog, you can find it there. It's all free. Katie has started on the art for it as well. There's a couple little pieces I'll put in here. They look very, very nice. I'm very happy with them. Katie's done a really awesome job on them. They look super fucking great. Yeah, in regards to JOC news, that's pretty much how that's going. We're still trying to do stuff with Charisma Check. It's difficult. Livy's work schedule and my school schedule clash in the most uncomfortable and terrible ways imaginable, so recording is going to be very difficult. And we may have to, I think the amount that we are going to be able to record is not going to facilitate the amount of money we're going to have to spend to get SoundCloud to work properly and in the way that we want it to, so we may have to just have a YouTube-only podcast, which I know is not great, but, you know, I don't know. We've not made any concrete decisions yet. Things might change. Decisions have yet to be made. So, again, more news on that to come at some point in the future, hopefully sometime next week when we have the opportunity to properly talk about it. But yeah, that is it for JOC news in its entirety. I wanted to talk about the games I've been running recently, because I think there's a few interesting little tidbits that I found, some interesting things. In the recent Nightfall campaign I started, there was the 5 players in there, Livy, Katie, Jade, Ruben, and Sam, have recently sort of started their adventure. They got level 3 characters, you know, they're going about doing their business. Being a little questionable in morality. Some of them are very good, and some of them are very neutral. Drug stealing has already begun, and we're only on session 6 or 7. As of recently, the party have recently arrived on a quest to a city called Ark, and I figured Ark was interesting to talk about because of the way that it is and what it contains, because Ark is a city of goblinoids. And one might think, well, how do they sneak in there? It's like, no, they just got let in. The goblins are pretty chill. They're pretty cool guys. They're pretty comfortable with people being there, and they actively want people to come. They want to be recognized as they someday want to become an independent city-state. And that is kind of their aim, and they want to entice humanoids to come and trade with them. And it's this. Imagine a more civilized goblin town from The Hobbit, and that's kind of what it looks like, except it's in sort of a ravine instead of just in, like, a giant underground cave. And also their leader is not a terrible flesh monster with a really gross face. Just some priest lady. Ark is interesting in that it's sort of a defiance of D&D and fantasy norms in the this creature is evil because reasons trope. You know, like orcs, goblins, kobold, you know, those sorts of creatures, they're just kind of written in as like, these creatures are evil by definition. And I think the only one that you would have to actually change significant things about that being's origin to make that statement of they are evil true is the gnolls, because kind of live for carnage, that's kind of their whole deal. But the others, on the other hand, they're just different and weird, and people don't like that very much, which thereby makes them evil. And I think that's a very interesting sort of analogy of the concept of evil, of just stating that because what they do is different, they must be super evil. So, you know, the orcs are going to kidnap the blacksmith's daughter, The goblins are going to steal all your stuff, and the kobolds will drop rocks on your head just because they're evil. And I think I've kind of hated that trope for a long time. Like, obviously, clash of culture is going to cause one to believe the other to be evil intrinsically, but doesn't make these beings evil. The clash of culture just makes the average NPC perceive them as evil. I've done various, I've done another arc in one of the other games in which orcs were a very sort of neutral party. It was just a few strictly evil orcs controlling some fairly neutral orcs. They were just sort of quite nationalist orcs, but still, again, very neutral. There were good orcs as well, trying to defeat the evil orcs, and that kind of contrast I think is very important, which is why I often openly say, orc is just a player race you can just pick. Goblin is a player race you can just pick. You don't even have to ask me. It's just like, yeah, no, you can play that. That's fine. I think that's kind of I feel it's a very interesting thing. I think it's a very interesting thing. It's almost like the concept of these creatures being evil is like a fantasy stereotype, which I find is a very interesting thing to sort of explore. And I think with it being a stereotype, both in the context of D&D and in sort of a meta context as well, I think that's very interesting. I think the in context, like within D&D itself, I think it's a very interesting thing to explore, with not from Critical Role being a reasonably good aligned character, but is constantly being questioned and sort of given dirty looks because she's a goblin, but she's not necessarily evil. She's not morally sound, but again, that's a clash of culture right there, and that's just kind of how that goes. Her morality is very different to everybody else's. And I think that's a very interesting thing for a player to explore in a character, and for a DM to use as an interesting story thread. So I think a lot of people can kind of relate, like a lot of players can relate to that, because I look different. I must be a threat. And I think there are probably a lot of people who play this game who can very much relate to that. And I think it's a very interesting plot thread to discover and kind of go through, and whether the character is kind of accepting of, this is just how it is and that's fine, I'm just going to deal with it and appreciate the people who respect me, or if they want to actively try and change the public opinion. Either one of those things is a very compelling character trait that I think a lot of people could do with exploring, because it is a very interesting one. And like I said, Sam is a very good example of this. It also sort of led me to this concept of obviously this is still using the example of goblins and Ark, led me to create a whole different sort of goblinoid. A goblinoid that isn't written in as crazy brutes or warmongering nutjobs or just whatever the fuck goblins are. I wrote in brownies, which are, again, it's the sort of D&D trope of take a bunch of words that mean the same thing and make them a bunch of words that are totally different but slightly related things. Brownies are goblinoids, not as big as bugbears or hobgoblins, but they're still medium creatures. They are neutral aligned, I believe. They're either lawful or true neutral, if I remember correctly. And there's some art here by Nicholas Kole from the cancelled Project Copernicus. This is the art that heavily inspired this. The kind of the cowl over the face inspired a very sort of religious thing. And I wanted them to be very sort of spiritual and worship ancient deities, like huge, immeasurable numbers of ancient beings that most people have never heard of, which I think is a very interesting thing. It also allows me to just sort of be like, oh yes, this guy, he worships random name, random title, like Artush, Prince of the Nine Winds, or something like that. That kind of sort of random name, random title. It was a being that probably exists at some point, and that's what this guy worships. I think that's very interesting. And that's that kind of concept of, if it's written in as evil, it doesn't necessarily have to be evil, because most beings, like with demons, I get it, they're cosmic entities. That's kind of, it kind of makes sense that they're all evil. Goblins and orcs are just, they're mortals. They're they're just mortals, so mortals are kind of known for their amorality and just kind of, mixed morality. So I think it's a very interesting thread to explore. But yeah, I would say if you are a player looking to create a new character, or if you're a DM who's looking to create a very interesting plot thread or locale, take one of the monsters from the monster manual and make them a reasonably civilized people. You'll sure surprise your players, especially if they're long-term D&D fans who see a kobold and instantly want to stab it, and this kobold's just like, yo, what's up? Want to come to my bar? I sell drinks. Okay. That'd throw a lot of people off, because it's not a player character. It's an NPC, and then they go to the tavern and they find that it's in a city of kobolds. Fairly hospitable kobolds as well, that are pretty content with just random non-kobolds being there. I think, again, especially for a lot of old D&D players, and even new D&D players who've watched stuff like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, just seeing an orc just go, what's up? That's a big moment. That's a big thing that they're gonna be like, oh, this is different. This is interesting. Yeah, just some food for thought. I figured it was a very interesting topic to talk about. Yeah, I'd say that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you for watching this installment of the DM Journal. If you enjoyed this, there are some buttons below this video that you can press. You all know what they do. Everybody else has told you 100,000 times. You don't need telling again. But if you want to press them, feel free. If you don't, that's fine. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.